Edgar Conkling, founder of Mackinaw City. Edgar was born in New York during the War of 1812, while Mackinaw City was still British territory, and Edgar was raised in New York. The 1830s were a time of great Western movement inspired by improved modes of transportation, such as the Erie Canal and the Trans-Appalachian Road. The movement was also pushed by a series of deadly cholera epidemics in New York. Edgar's family moved to Mount Vernon, Ohio in 1831 when Edgar was 18 years old. At 20 years old, he married Belinda Longworth, whose father owned acres of rolling Appalachian foothills, which held salt springs. He had a salt-producing business in which Edgar probably participated. When the trees to fuel the fires were all burned, both families moved to Leroy, Illinois in 1836. This was a promising town with the arrival of a railroad imminent. Here Edgar ran a merchandise store and speculated in land development. From Mackinaw City's perspective, this was a crucial time. While living in Leroy, he undoubtedly became aware of Mackinac Island. Only a few miles from his home was the town of Mackinac, Illinois. The fur traders, who had spent winters in Illinois and summers at Mackinac Island, had named this Illinois town Mackinac. He also learned about platting land. In Leroy, he platted sections of town with the specifications that the lots be 40 feet wide and 125 feet deep. The streets were 66 feet wide. His land speculations failed even though he built 25 spec houses because the recession of 1837 slowed the wild western expansion dramatically. In 1841, at the age of 29, he and his wife Belinda moved to Cincinnati, Ohio, the sixth largest city in America. Here he started a paint company. Demand for paint was great because homes were now being made of wood rather than logs. Siding needed to be painted. He was apparently very successful. He also speculated in railroad stock and again in land development. His paint company was merged with others and today is the company Eagle Pitcher, a Fortune 500 company that makes appliance paint and batteries for space vehicles. Once the railroad between Cincinnati and Toledo, Ohio was completed, Edgar and Belinda took a vacation trip to see Mackinac Island. They went by rail to Toledo and then steamship to Mackinac Island. The land developer and Edgar could not help but be impressed by the potential of northern Michigan. James Strang of Beaver Island was the region's legislator, and he was bringing government and roads to northern Michigan. In 1853, he had the counties now named Emmett and Sheboygan laid out and government set up. As a two-time state representative in 1852 and 1854, he was constantly pushing for roads to connect Mackinac to the north and to the south. Also at this time, the Sioux Locks were being constructed, and in 1855 they opened, bringing large numbers of freighters past Mackinac on their way to Chicago. The region was also receiving federal attention, and a lightship parked at Waugoshant's Point, and by 1856 a lighthouse built on the site. No wonder Edgar foresaw this area as the Chicago of the North. In 1854, he bought 1,800 acres of land, including the land as far south as Sheboygan and as far north as St. Ignace. But the Mackinaw City area showed the most promise, and in 1857 he had the town platted in anticipation of the arrival of railroad lines and roads. Unfortunately, the bigger world again upset Edgar's development plans. The Civil War interrupted railroad construction. Mackinac languished until well after the Civil War. The first settlers did not arrive until the 1870s, when the Stimpsons of Chicago moved here. Edgar was doggedly loyal to his dream for Mackinac. He and Belinda moved here in 1870. He promoted and defended his lands for decades. Belinda died in Mackinac City in 1871. Edgar then moved back to New York City. When his health declined, he moved back to Illinois to live with his family. He died in 1881, one day before the arrival of the railroad to Mackinac. He and Belinda are buried in Bloomington, Illinois. Today I remember Edgar every time I drive the streets. He learned from Leroy and platted Mackinac with bigger lots and bigger streets. Our lots are 50 feet by 150 feet, and the streets are 80 feet wide. That means that 25% of the land that Edgar bought for Mackinac City he turned into public land. We all benefit from that generosity today. The town is laid out in a dense square arrangement, not the long linear arrangement of St. Ignace. This would facilitate walking access to all parts of the town for arriving train passengers. Edgar even specified that sidewalks should be 5 feet wide, huge by most town standards. He made Mackinac a walking-friendly town, and we benefit today. He also platted the two 150-foot-wide boulevards that intersect at the village dock, now leased to Sheplers. These were originally planned for railroad lines, but serve us well today as major driving arteries. Although 150 years later, Edgar's Mackinac is still no Chicago, it has prospered because of Edgar's foresight and generosity.